Hello, welcome to the ranch. Today we're going to be talking about different kind of fruit. You know, I like a plant that can take care of itself. It doesn't take a lot of labor, resist pests, disease, that kind of thing, and it produces a lot of fruit. Well, I've got a different kind of cherry that just might interest you. This special cherry, it deserves a better place among a lot more growers. You know, it's sort of a powerhouse. It can really fill those unused corners and space and free up for some other plants. Rather than having to grow a full-size cherry tree, these are just kind of a bush. Now the history of this plant, it was introduced in about the 1880s in the United States. And it was pretty popular for a good number of years. There's a good chance that a lot of our great-grandparents were relying on this plant. Some of those cherry pies that were baked back in the 1890s and 1900s, they might have just been this kind of cherry. So let's just go ahead and take a look at the Nanking cherry. Quite an attractive plant. Not too tall. You can just see, it's just loaded with fruit. Off of a bush about this size, I've filled a 5-gallon bucket with fruit. That's an awful lot of fruit for such a tiny space. And it's really quite delicious. Yep, that's good stuff. Fruit, they're small. They're not much bigger than, a marble or a blueberry. They have an incredible bright red color. And there's not really named varieties of this plant. So there can be variability in the seedlings you might get. But the majority of them, in my experience, have been good. I've had a couple that weren't the best, but most taste like a sour cherry that you could expect off of a regular pie cherry tree. Good stuff. They do get a rather large seed as compared to their flesh side, but there's still quite a bit of flesh there. See, they're good. I can't help but eating them just while we're here talking. They kind of fell out of favor, from what I understand, because they don't keep all that long. You know, you pick them, you got a week. You got to do something with them. And so for a lot of your backyard growers and stuff, that's not a problem. But years ago, when we were switching from the fresh to more of market type, then they fell out of favor. They weren't looked at and used for the grocery store. And so even though our great-grandparents were probably utilizing this fruit, just a couple of generations, this fruit's all but forgotten. I feel it's worth rediscovery. We should bring it back. It deserves a place in more gardens. For many of your backyard gardeners, food forest people, don't have a ton of space, or even if you have 1,000 acres, this can really be a great plant. I don't have to spray it. You know, a lot of cherry trees, they get that sticky sap. This has kind of a furry type leaf, and that's part of how it got its scientific name, Prunus tomentosa. How do you like that? I can even say this scientific name. The Nanking cherry, it goes by a whole bunch of names. It's Chinese wild cherry, downy cherry, Korean cherry, Himalayan wild cherry. There's all different kinds of names, but there's not a lot of cultivars. So you're gonna have to probably take chances with seedlings. But in my experience, majority of them, they work out. It does seem to be a short-lived tree. That's a disadvantage or an advantage. If you're an evolving garden and things are kind of changing out, maybe you've got a bunch of young fruit trees, they're going to get big and shade things out, then this could be a good plant, because by the time those fruit trees are more mature and stuff, this thing is probably dying out. But often it'll reseed, but not invasively. And it can be used as like a hedgerow. You know, a nice edible hedge in an area of your garden or yard. Now, this plant is unique. In researching about the plant, I find a lot of variable information. It's all over the map. Just there's not a lot of research done on this plant compared to other plants. Now, it looks like it may not be the best for the southeast in more humid areas, but I don't know that. I'm just kind of going off of what I was able to research. Other research says it shouldn't do well here in my environment, here in the high deserts. But it thrives. It really does well. Once it's established, it doesn't need a ton of water. You know, that first year or two, it's kind of critical. You do need to make sure it's watered in and gets a good start. Don't fertilize it. Don't spray it. I give it a little supplemental water. But as all it does is give and give and give. Just off of a few bushes like this, I'm going to get more cherries than I know what to do with. There's something that just draws you in with this plant. Maybe it's raw, primitive beauty, or maybe it's something else. Maybe it's just that it's not been bred for hundreds of years to be a commercialized plant. It definitely touches that primitive part in us and makes us feel part of the nature and beauty around us. Easy to harvest. I don't need a ladder. I just take my hand in a small container and gently rake across the branches, and most of the berries will fall right in. Just a couple minutes of picking here, and I've filled a whole dish. Plenty for a fine dessert. Now, the research says it's not self-fertile. So you do have to have two plants for cross-pollination. In my experience, I don't know if that's 100% true, as I've had some a considerable distance from each other and still got some fruit. Definitely you're going to do better to have more than one plant to get that maximum fruit harvest, but don't be surprised if you get one itself. Another great thing is it's super tough with the cold hardiness. I've had this thing full blossom, and I tell you what, this thing is spectacular when it's in blossom. They're just mostly white, maybe a little bit of pinkish cast on some bushes. It's just profuse. It's like a white fountain in the early spring. I've had snow and extreme cold hit this plant and still got a bumper crop. Another fruit has been lost. This thing, it still gives me. It just keeps on giving. So whether you have a small plot or a big spread, the Nanking cherry might just be a really great plant for your consideration. Thank you much for watching. Check in again on me sometime.